When we talk about natural disasters, usually we talk about too much wind, too much water, or maybe even some fire. Hi, I'm Chad Booth. Today on the county seat, we're going to talk about a natural disaster that can prove to be more costly than all of the others. It's drought, and it is taking a grip of the West. Today on our panel discussion, we will talk to commissioners from San Juan County and other interested parties about how the drought is taking a hold of us and changing the way our lives are conducted. But we are going to first start by taking you out to the desert to see what the face of drought really looks like.
It is a dry landscape, parched and bristling under the hot sun, no respite or promise of rain in sight, and the ground so arid it's turned into little more than dust bowl-like powder. This is a land in the clutches of drought. And as of last month, nearly half of Utah is considered to be in a state of extreme drought, with topsoil moisture less than 50% of normal. Now, these conditions do impact all of us to some extent, but humans aren't the only species affected by the lack of water. The wild horses roaming the open spaces of Utah find themselves in a precarious position these days, but lucky for them, the Bureau of Land Management is pouring these Mustangs a drink.
We're in the Cedar Mountain herd management area, and we've been hauling water for the horses. We do this about 3 times a week right now. There just isn't enough natural water for these horses to get through this really hot, dry summer. We've been in a drought for the last several years, and so we haul water out here so that we can get these horses through a rough patch.
West Desert District Wild Horse and Burro Specialist Kevin Lloyd takes the trip out here every few days. He's filling different troughs with enough water to keep the herds alive. One would think that bringing water out here for the horses would undermine their wild status, but back in 1971, the Wild Horse and Burro Act was passed, and that placed protections on these noble creatures. Ever since then, the BLM has managed the herds in the 11 western states, including Utah. The simple act of providing water can mean these Mustangs survive from one year to the next.
The horses just get emaciated to the point where they can't travel between where the forage is at and where the water is at. And so they get to where they're just spending a lot of their time on a water source and they don't have the energy to leave it.
These areas are open to the public, but if you have plans to visit one of the trails and come across horses drinking from the water holes, Kevin does have a few words of caution for you.
The animals, as they come in for water, don't try to keep them off the water, don't camp on the water so that animals can't come in and get a drink, and just be kind of sensitive to that so that the animals can use the water that's available to them.
For the county seat, I'm Terry Wood.
Thanks, Terry, for that report. We will have a discussion on drought in southeastern Utah when we come back. Terry points out that cycles of dry and wet are common to Utah, and they usually run on about a 10-year calendar. But the cycles lately have been a little bit more extreme each time. However, many climatologists point out that that too may be a cycle, say, on a 100-year timetable. We just won't know until we get further into history and record keeping. We'll be back with County Seat in just a minute with our discussion on Utah's current drought.
August 22nd through the 25th in Lake Town, Utah is the Bear Lake Mountain Man Rendezvous. Come see, hear, smell, and taste the fun and adventure of an authentic Mountain Man meetup. Traders offering crafts and authentic period trade goods, as well as craftsmen demonstrating their skill. All this and more at the actual location where mountain men gather to exchange furs for supplies and prove their abilities through competition. The Bear Lake Mountain Man Rendezvous. Find out more at bearlakerendezvous.com.
The State of Utah School and Institutional Trust Lands Administration, SITLA, manages 3.5 million acres of Utah lands with the express purpose of providing financial support to further the education of Utah's students, while promoting local industry, oil and gas, even residential development, all at the same time. Through the careful use of trust lands, the School Land Trust Program will distribute nearly $37 million to Utah schools this year. The State of Utah School and Institutional Trust Lands Administration, building the state's permanent school fund.
Carbon County is typically known for its industry and coal production, but that's not all. Utah's Castle Country has something for everyone. Carbon Country Club Golf Course, with 18 great holes of perfectly manicured fairways and pristine greens, is second to none. And with 4 sets of tees, the whole family can enjoy our golf course. Plus, if you hit it bad enough, you might even find some Indian pictographs hidden in the cliffs above the 18th hole. Visit castlecountry.com for more info.
Welcome back to the county seat. Our topic today is the silent natural disaster drought here in Utah, and it's taking its grips in certain parts of the state, severely in other parts generally. Joining us for this discussion, Commissioner Bruce Adams from San Juan County. We'd like to introduce Bob Berry, who is from San Juan County, is a dry farmer in the county, and is also on the State Soil Conservation Board. Thank you, Bob, for joining us. And Randy Julander, who's the Snow Survey Supervisor for one of the offices of the USDA. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Randy, from your perspective, how dangerous of a spot is Utah in with drought and water right now?
That's a fascinating question, because drought is a multifaceted kind of a thing. It's hard to pin down. It, like you say, it is the silent disaster right here. It's kind of like a grizzly bear chewing your arm off. You're never sure how long it's going to last, but you feel so much better when he quits doing it. And it's, you take a look at the state. This is the second dry summer that we've had. Very poor snowpacks in 2012, 2013, very low runoff, currently experiencing very low runoff. And the thing that's really been bad is that our summer precipitation has been extremely low as well. Both of these years have seen time periods from February basically through the end of June where our precipitation basically just shut off. And that's really a killer when it comes to farming and ranching communities, because they count, especially the dry farmers, they count on having spring precipitation to germinate that crop and get it up to production level. It's also one of those things that if you don't have precip at that time, it's an interesting fact, we're about 80% of average precipitation right now. 80% is not that bad, but the timing of the precipitation has really killed us. When you go 2, 3, 4 months in a row with very, very little precipitation, your winter range suffers, your annual grasses come up, they don't produce anything, and it's extremely hard on agriculture. And when things get hard on agriculture, those tentacles then reach out to other areas of every community in the state.
How big of an impact, I mean, you're in one of the hardest hit parts of the state, San Juan County. How big of an impact is this having on your bottom line or your crop production?
Well, if you take a look at production, particularly, and Randy talks about our spring work, we need spring moisture, but we got to have winter moisture. Because right now, we're working on next year's crop. Because we'll plant our fall wheat in September. If we don't have moisture to get it up in September, we don't have a crop of wheat. We'll depend on whatever kind of a spring crop we get. Spring crop would be spring wheat, which does very little in our country. Safflower, which we raise a lot of, can do pretty well. But other than that, and there are not many beans raised anymore. So, you know, what we're going through last year was a bad year. We were down, for instance, on a 30 bushel average wheat crop, we probably averaged 12. This year, we've cut a lot of 6.5 bushel wheat. We're cutting 10 bushel wheat. If we average 10 this year, we're going to be happy. So that's probably 20% of where we ought to be. So when you start carrying those over more than 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, then things really start getting tough.
Can it cripple you?
It can, absolutely. It absolutely can. And probably where we are now, the farmers now that are in the business are probably more geared to handle it than they ever have been. Reason being, there's less of us, but we have more acres. We're probably a little more solid maybe over time because of that. And so the farmers, I actually think the cow people are worse off than the farmers. I think we're just a year or two behind them, but we'll eventually be
Bruce,
there.
you're nodding because that applies to you.
Absolutely, and I have friends who are in the cattle business, as well as Bob. He feeds a few cows, but we have friends down in San Juan County who did not produce 1 bale of hay this year that generally produce several hundred tons of hay that they feed their cows through the winter. And so they're looking at selling their herds off. These are family operations that have been there for 3 or 4 generations. They just haven't been able to survive the drought. Not to be able to produce hay has crippled them. Some of the people that graze the BLM in the winter are going to be okay, because we've had some recent moisture, like Randy said, that helps those warm weather grasses grow. But when it comes to production, a lot of those farmers need some hay in order to, or ranchers need some hay in order to survive, and they just haven't harvested any hay this year in San Juan County.
We're not going to be able to at this particular junction. You take a look at Ken's Lake.
Right.
When that thing's full, it should have 23 to 2,400 acre feet of water in it. Right now, it has 320. That's 320 total, of which they can only take 200 acre feet. That's bo diddly squat. You can't cut any kind of hay on that kind of water. Well, and that's the bottom of the reservoir. Yeah,
and down in Blanding, Recapture Reservoir is already below the reserve pool that's required by the wildlife people to have fish. Lloyd's Lake in Monticello is not quite below the reserve pool, but we started out this year on a 3,000 acre foot reservoir with less than 1,000 acre feet in there after the runoff this year. So we're all in trouble.
Okay, well, you're the county commissioner, so the people of the county are looking to you. How do you plan for it?
Well, one of the things that we encourage people to do is pray a lot. I mean, you know, there's not a lot of things that the county can do. There's not a lot of things that the farmers can do to create moisture. We did get some funding for Monticello just today to drill a couple of deep water wells that could help relieve their culinary water situation, but that really doesn't help our agricultural community at all, and that's a big part of the economy of San Juan County is agriculture.
Well, you know, and you talk about farmers, what they can do. You know, we change our cropping rotation depending on how the moisture comes. In other words, last fall we probably planted half of the winter wheat that we would normally plant, because we got a rain through parts of the country that we could plant wheat in, and we got right in on it right then. As soon as it came, left, we started planting. But we couldn't plant the balance of our crop because it never did come. So where we are right now, so where we had wheat and normally do have wheat, we have safflower this year, and it's a spring crop. So what we did, we saved that what little moisture we had through the summer, we saved what we got through the winter, and we're using that this spring. And now these July monsoon rains come, they're going to help that crop. But if we didn't have enough moisture to get it up at all, we couldn't have planted it in the spring.
And when you say save it, that means you have to make a large investment on your own land.
That's right.
Retention.
That's right. We have, you can essentially say we farm in thirds. We have a crop of wheat that's a third, we'll have a crop of safflower that's a third, and we'll lay open a crop that's summer fallows. So we keep that weeded all summer long, and that's an expensive thing to do. But we're saving moisture all the time we're doing that. So when we come into the fall, and right now, these rains that are coming, we want the moisture to meet what we have taken out of the top to keep the weeds out. We've got moisture down on the bottom. We'd like those two to come together, then we'll plant.
Stay with us. We'll be back with the county seat, our conversation on drought. This is a great conversation. If you haven't hit the record button, please do. You'll want to share this with your friends. We'll be right back in just a minute.
Bryce Valley ATV UTV Jamboree here in Panguitch has been a great place to come, a great place to bring your family.
We've got probably more trails than any other county in the state to ride on. It's just such a vast variety of scenery to see. We just thought we'd share it with everyone if we can get down here.
The town is so welcoming to all of us that come here. It's probably one of the best jamborees I've been to.
The best part about raising children here in Vernal and the Uinta Basin is just the smaller community that makes you feel like when you go somewhere, you know everybody.
It's not too big, it's not too small. We're close to the Wasatch Front if there's anything we need out there.
So we packed up our 3 kids and here we came to Uinta County, and what a great place it was. What a great move. My job has offered me the ability to college educate all 3 of my children.
My father, he was an engineer for Chevron, retired 39 some odd years. And Jeff, my husband, it's the same way. He's always worked in the oil and gas, always had a job here.
Uinta Basin has been fantastic in supporting what we've tried to do both as a business and also in the development of mountain bike trails and the sport of mountain biking.
One of the big reasons why I live where I live is I'm able to run up to a beautiful place like this and spend some good quality time.
There's always plenty to do in Uinta County.
If you haven't been to Starvation in a while, you're in for a great surprise. New campsites, new cabins, and beach improvements await your next visit. Just 2 hours away, but a world away from the Wasatch Front in Duchesne County. Starvation State Park is located 4 miles northwest of Duchesne, just off US Highway 40. Duchesne County. Close enough for business, far enough to get away.
Welcome back to the county seat. Our conversation today is about drought, and we have talked about the things that Mother Nature and the Lord above can do to help us, which is where we've probably had to turn to in some parts of the state. But now we're going to talk about what we can do and what good range forest and land management can do. What are we doing wrong?
In terms of water generation across the state, a couple of the things that we've done is that our forests have changed dramatically over time. The bottom line is when you look at a watershed, each tree becomes a straw, taking water out. The general rule is that conifers use more water than aspens. The state of Utah has lost 1.5 million acres of aspen lands over the last 50 to 100 years, which means that the snow hangs on the conifers, sublimates off, the conifers use more water, and they also pose a much greater fire hazard to our forest. Our forests have become extremely dense, lots and lots of trees. Compared to the turn of the century, we've seen a huge, huge difference in the total number of trees and the composition of trees that change over a long period of time here. And when you do that, like I said, conifers take more water and they hold more snow up. We lose a lot more of our snowpack directly to sublimation. That means there's less left over for runoff generation.
For snowpack. Where does it go? To Colorado, or depends upon the way the wind's
sublimation
blowing?
Takes it directly into the atmosphere, back basically, and typically not at a level where you could actually generate precipitation out of that, but it makes its way eastward and joins up other clouds and or whatever. But that's part of the problem that we see long term, that if we were able to get more aspen lands back, we would probably be able to generate more water off of our watersheds.
How do we manage the forests? I mean, we have been in a protectionist mode in both the forest, the Park Service, and on most public lands. So your prescription is more fires, or what?
In terms of management, you should manage to a state of a healthy forest that produces clean water, clean air, diversity of species, and diversity of animals, and manage to that state. And you really only have a couple of tools to do that. If you're going to take trees out, you can either log it or you can burn it. Burn it by prescribed burns is probably the best option, but if you allow Mother Nature to do it for you, I'll guarantee you, you're not going to like the results, because we have this huge forest accumulation right now. We're seeing bigger and bigger fires, and part of that is due to fuel accumulation and the number of trees per acre across your watersheds.
Which are also drying out the soils.
Absolutely. You get more trees, you get drier conditions.
Are you seeing evidence of this?
Absolutely. We have a mountain really close to Monticello and Blanding, and we see a lot of dead timber up on that mountain that really needs to be managed either by logging or some kind of a removal. I'm not really that in favor of burning the mountain, but we've got a lot of dead timber up on our watershed, and I know that's not good for the health of the watershed.
Think of it in this way. You got 10 soldiers on the edge of the desert. You got water for 5. You send all 10, how many die?
All of them.
All of them. And that's what you're seeing west-wide across our watersheds when we have relatively minor droughts like we've had the last 5-10 years in this kind of a situation. These pale in comparison to the paleo-hydrologic droughts that we've seen, kind of a situation. It really, really is. And we have literally millions of acres of trees die from this.
Okay, I'm just listening to what you just said in your official capacity as the Snow Survey Supervisor. And I'm tying that minor drought, but I read the newspaper and my gosh, the local newspapers and television stations make it sound like the end of the world. These are minor droughts?
Compared to the paleo-hydrologic record that extends way back through tree rings and those kinds of things, these are relatively minor droughts.
Okay, well, that's a good place to take a break. Stay with us. Let that one sink in for a minute. We'll take a commercial break. We'll be right back here with the county seat.
What brings you to St. George?
Business meeting.
Staying long?
Just here for the day. Quick in and out.
Hey, I just landed. Can we meet in a half an hour?
Oh, too bad. Why so fast?
Stay any longer, we'll run out of things to do. On second thought.
Buddy, something's come up. I'm gonna need another hour. Can we push the meeting till noon? I am definitely gonna need to reschedule. Holy.
Sit back, relax, and enjoy your 45-minute flight to Salt Lake. How'd that meeting go?
I should have booked a weekend.
Kanab, base camp for your southern Utah adventures. You belong in Kanab.
Welcome back to the county seat. Our topic today is the drought that is descending upon Utah. Much to my surprise, I've discovered this is a very minor drought, although you wouldn't know it by reading the newspaper. So, Bruce, when we talk about San Juan County, we're talking about two counties in one, because you've got the Navajo Nation and the tribal lands out there. They don't really have runoff at their disposal out on the reservation. How's the water situation there?
That's right, Chad. They have no storage reservoirs that they can catch water for culinary or animal use. All they have is that underground aquifer where they can drill a well. And usually on the reservation, they drill a community well. And everybody comes to the community well and they have their 50-gallon drum and they haul the water back to their home or their hogan. But we're getting reports back to the county commission that many of those wells are starting to dry up. Some of them have arsenic in them or other minerals that are poisoning the cattle. We're finding dead animals around these wells all over on the reservation. That creates a problem with those dead carcasses and is a real concern for our Native American population. San Juan County is about 50-50 with Navajo Indians representing about 50% of the population, but they're in a severe situation with those wells, and like Randy says, they can't catch any water. There's no way for them to catch water and store it. So when you have these minor droughts that Randy's talking about, it really probably affects the Navajo reservation more severely than any of the population in San Juan County.
So what's the solution for them? Go deeper?
Well, the solution is that they've got to go down and tap that aquifer in another place, or go down to a deeper formation or something like that. You know, it's not an easy solution. It's difficult for those people because they rely on the Navajo Nation for their funding source, and it's difficult for the county to try and step in and take the place of the Navajo Council or the Navajo Nation. And so we try to work with them the best we can on a county basis, and we've been able to put some money into some of those water projects, but not anywhere near what they need.
That's correct. Our agency, Natural Resources Conservation Service, was just able to complete a well here in the past couple of weeks for the Navajo Nation, but it takes a lot of money and it takes a lot of time, and then they have to proof the well, and then they have to get things going. So it's one of those things that takes a lot of resources to get that kind of thing moving.
If we could just get Bob down there and do a little farming down on the reservation and teach them how to dry land farm like he does, they'd probably be pretty happy.
Yeah, if they could, they'd be real happy, but they're just in the wrong spot, supposedly.
That's a pretty dry place.
Pretty dry.
That's a different kind of dry farming that you're talking
it's
about.
a whole different thing. And,
I would understand. Yeah. When you've got areas or sections of the state, and it's not unique just to the Navajo Nation, there are other portions of the state that literally rely on aquifers, and that becomes a problem when we have these short water years. What is the prescriptive remedy on a long-term basis? More wells and use the deeper wells at different times, or? There's a lot of actual things that can be done. Weber Basin is actually doing some pilot studies right now where you take water in the really heavy years like a 2011, 2005 and inject it into, pump it back into your groundwater and then store it there and pull it back out for later use. So there's some of those things, and you can design leaky reservoirs to us. Sand Hollow down at St. George is one of these where it's designed to leak out the bottom fill of the aquifer, and then you can take it out. But it's time, it's money, it's resources. All of those things have to come into play, and none of these are easy or cheap. So should that be part of our mix for the future then, is to look at some of these longer term things so that we're more prepared? Absolutely. It's all of the above kind of option. I would like to thank you all for joining us on the County Seat. Please, if you did record this, go share it with your friends. Tell them about our Facebook page and our website. You can watch it again there, and we would love your comments on our Facebook page, thecountyseat.tv. Remember, local government is where your life happens. Participate in it, and we'll see you next week on the County Seat. Thank you.